An emperor's soldiers arrived to exile a bishop. His crime was refusing to sign a single piece of paper condemning an innocent man. This is Saint Eusebius of Vercelli, whose feast the Church keeps on August 2nd. Born in Sardinia in the early 4th century, Eusebius went to Rome as a young man, served as a lector, and around the year 345 was chosen as the first bishop of Vercelli, in northern Italy, a rural region still barely evangelized. He gathered his priests into a single community, combining pastoral ministry with prayer and a discipline inspired by monastic life, an experiment that would help shape how priests were formed across the entire Western Church. When the Arian crisis tore through the 4th century, denying that the Son was truly God, Eusebius held firm to the Nicene faith: the Son is fully divine, one in being with the Father. At the Council of Milan in 355, he refused to sign the political condemnation of Saint Athanasius, and Emperor Constantius II sent him into exile. He was moved from Scythopolis in Palestine to Cappadocia and then to the Thebaid, watched and mistreated the entire way. Freed only after the emperor's death in 361, he returned to work rebuilding unity among Christians and kept guiding his diocese until his death in Vercelli around the year 371. In a surviving letter, he urged his people, guard the faith, keep harmony, be persistent in prayer. Eusebius is remembered as the patron of Vercelli, and his life teaches that real courage is often quiet, simply refusing to sign what conscience will not allow. Centuries later, in 19th-century France, a sickly boy who dreamed only of the priesthood would grow up to change how the whole Church understood the Eucharist. The Church also celebrates today Saint Peter Julian Eymard, born in Mure-d'Isère on February 4, 1811, and who died in that same town on August 1, 1868, his feast kept the following day. Family opposition and fragile health interrupted his studies again and again, but Peter was ordained in 1834 for the diocese of Grenoble, then joined the Marist Fathers in 1839. As a preacher and superior, he noticed a painful gap: ordinary workers and the poor in France's industrializing cities were drifting further and further from the practice of their faith. During a procession in Lyon in 1845, an interior experience convinced him that the Eucharist itself had to become the center of any real spiritual renewal. After a difficult discernment and his departure from the Marists, he founded the Congregation of the Blessed Sacrament in Paris in May 1856, and later helped Marguerite Guillot found the Servants of the Blessed Sacrament. He promoted Eucharistic adoration, organized retreats, and personally prepared poor adults and laborers to receive their first communion, refusing any devotion detached from real human need. He wrote, "I have thought long about remedies for this universal indifference. I found only one, the Eucharist, love for Jesus in the Eucharist." Pope Pius XI beatified him in 1925, and St. John XI canonized him in 1962. Peter is remembered as the apostle of the Eucharist, and his life teaches that true worship always leads back to serving the people right in front of us. Decades later, in southern Italy, the third of 10 children born into a poor family would spend his entire priesthood rescuing vocations that everyone else had given up on. This is Saint Justin Maria Russolillo, born in Pianura, near Naples, on January 18, 1891, and who died there on August 2, 1955, the very day his feast is now kept. Justin himself had needed the help of benefactors to enter the seminary as a child, because his family had little money, and he never forgot what that generosity meant. Ordained in 1913, he opened a small house of his own to take in young men and women who sensed a call to religious life but had nowhere to turn, an effort that struggled and nearly collapsed before it finally took hold. He served as a military chaplain during the First World War, then became pastor of San Giorgio Martiri in Pianura in 1920, where he gathered the first vocationist fathers, followed a year later by a women's branch. His work was never meant to recruit for a single institute. Instead, Justin helped each young person discern and then sent them toward whatever diocese or congregation truly fit their calling. He combined spiritual direction, catechesis, and constant attention to the poor with a deep teaching on every person's union with the Trinity. In his private notebook he wrote, "The priest does not go out to please men, but to benefit souls." Pope Francis canonized him in 2022. Justin is remembered as the apostle of vocations, and his life teaches that no calling should ever be lost simply for lack of someone willing to open a door. Turning the clock back nearly 9 centuries, on the Iberian frontier, a French monk would help rebuild a diocese shattered by generations of war. The Church remembers today Saint Peter of Osma, born around 1040 in Bourges, France, and who died in Palencia, Spain, on August 2, 1109. Peter trained in the reforming monastic tradition of France and crossed into the Iberian Peninsula in the circle of the monk Bernard, who later became Archbishop of Toledo. After the Christian reconquest of Toledo in 1085, Peter helped reorganize pastoral life there as archdeacon, and when the ancient see of Osma was restored, he was chosen as its bishop, governing from roughly 1101 to 1109. He found an impoverished church in a frontier region reshaped by war, resettlement, and the daily mingling of different communities. Peter reorganized parishes and clergy, spread monastic discipline, and began rebuilding the cathedral on the site that would become El Burgo de Osma. In 1109, he accompanied King Alfonso VI through his final days and funeral in Sahagun. On the journey home, he fell ill and died in Palencia. His body was carried back, as he had wished, to the Cathedral of Osma. Devotion to him grew from an old medieval reputation for virtue and miracles reported at his tomb, long before formal canonization existed as we know it today. Peter is the official patron of the Diocese of Osma Soria, and his life teaches that rebuilding what has been broken, patiently and locally, is itself a form of holiness. From a rebuilt diocese on the frontier, we travel back to the very center of the Church, to 3rd century Rome. Today the Church also remembers Saint Stephen I, Pope from 254 until his death in Rome on August 2, 257. A native Roman about whom little is known before his election, Stephen took office in May 254, in the aftermath of the Decian persecution and the deep division caused by the schismatic Novatian. Like his immediate predecessors, he favored welcoming back into full communion those Christians who had faltered under persecution but showed genuine repentance. His pontificate is best remembered, though, for a sharp controversy over baptism performed by groups separated from the Catholic Church. Bishops in North Africa, led by Saint Cyprian of Carthage, insisted that converts coming from those groups needed to be baptized again. Stephen held firm to the Roman practice. A baptism celebrated with the Trinitarian formula was valid and simply needed to be received back through reconciliation, defending the objective power of the sacrament itself, independent of the minister's own worthiness. The dispute grew bitter and nearly broke communion between Rome and Carthage, but the Roman position eventually prevailed throughout the Church. Stephen died in Rome in 257 and was buried in the cemetery of Calixtus. A later legend claims he was beheaded during Mass, though the earliest records simply call him Pope, not martyr. Stephen's legacy rests on his defense of the Church's unity and of the sacrament's own power, a reminder that some truths are worth holding even when holding them costs a friendship. Nearly 9 centuries after Stephen, in medieval Castile, a mother's quiet household would shape one of the great religious orders in Church history, without her ever founding one herself. This is Blessed Joan of Azza, born around 1140 in the village of Azza, and who died sometime between 1202 and 1205, her memorial kept on August 2. Around 1160, Joan married Felix de Guzman and settled in Calaruga, a region marked by the constant tension between Christian and Muslim kingdoms. Tradition holds she raised 3 sons, including Blessed Manes and Saint Dominic of Guzman, who would go on to found the Order of Preachers. An early Dominican account, written decades after her death, describes Joan as honest, chaste, irreproachable, prudent, and deeply compassionate toward the poor and afflicted, a description of her character, not a phrase she herself spoke. What local memory preserves most clearly is a home always open to travelers, the needy, and neighbors, and the Christian upbringing she gave her own children. Later legends, like a dream of a dog carrying a torch before Dominic's birth, belong to devotional tradition rather than documented fact, though they helped her cult spread through the centuries. Pope Leo XII confirmed her age-old veneration in 1828, an act equivalent to beatification. Joan is proposed today as a model for wives, mothers, and Christian educators, and her life teaches that raising a child in faith, quietly and faithfully, can echo for centuries after we're gone. Nearly 7 centuries after Joan, in a different corner of Spain entirely, a Roma horse trader would refuse every offer of freedom rather than let go of his rosary. The Church honors today Blessed Ceferino Jimenez Mulla, known affectionately as El Pele, born in 1861 and shot near Barbastro at the start of August 1936. Ceferino spent decades living an itinerant life within the Castile Roma community before settling in Barbastro, where he married Teresa Jimenez according to Roma custom and later formalized the marriage sacramentally. The couple had no children of their own but raised a niece. He worked first weaving baskets, then trading livestock, and became known across the region for his honesty, his quiet help to the poor, and his skill at mediating disputes between Roma and non-Roma neighbors. Though he had no formal education, he taught children their catechism by heart. He joined the secular Franciscan order in 1926 and took part in local charitable conferences and Eucharistic adoration. When the Spanish Civil War broke out in July 1936, Ceferino stepped in to defend a priest whom militiamen were dragging away, and was arrested for it himself. Offered his freedom if he would simply hand over his rosary, he refused, and was shot at the start of August with the rosary still in his hands, reportedly crying out, "Long live Christ the King." Pope John Paul II beatified him in 1997, the first Roma man ever formally raised to the altars. Ceferino is venerated as a patron among the Roma and Sinti people, and his life teaches that dignity defended quietly, day after day, becomes the kind of courage that doesn't flinch even at the end. That same summer of 1936, in that very city of Barbastro, 3 Claretian priests would spend their final days in a crowded cell doing the one thing left to them, hearing each other's confessions. Today the Church also remembers Blessed Felipe de Jesus Muniz Azcona, Juan Diaz Nasti, and Leoncio Perez Ramos, the first 3 Claretian martyrs of Barbastro, all shot on August 2, 1936. Felipe, born in Navarre in 1875, led the Claretian community and seminary in Barbastro. Juan, born in Asturias in 1880, directed the seminarians, and Leoncio, born in La Rioja in 1875, managed the house. When militiamen searched their residence in July 1936 looking for weapons, they found nothing, but arrested the whole community anyway, simply for being religious. Felipe, Juan, and Leoncio were separated from their younger students and held in the town jail, where, during those final days, they prayed, heard confessions, and encouraged their frightened companions, seeking even to forgive the men holding them. In the early hours of August 2, with no trial at all, the 3 were led to the entrance of the Barbastro cemetery and shot, the first of 51 Claretians from that same community killed over the following 2 weeks. Pope John Paul II beatified all 51 martyrs of Barbastro in 1992, recognizing their deaths as hatred for the faith. Felipe, Juan, and Leoncio are remembered for the sacerdotal fidelity and care for the young that marked their final days, and their lives teach that even a locked cell can still become a place of ministry, if you choose to make it one. Not far from Barbastro, that same wave of violence would reach a Dominican professor hiding in the very town where he was born. This is Blessed Francisco Calvo Burillo, born in Híjar, in the province of Teruel, on November 21, 1881, and shot in that same town on August 2, 1936. Francisco entered the Dominican province of Aragon while still young, made his profession in 1898, and was ordained a priest in 1905, later earning a degree in philosophy and letters from the University of Barcelona. He devoted most of his life to teaching, forming young religious in Dominican schools and houses of study, and held academic responsibilities at the Order's Studium General in Valencia, combining intellectual formation with preaching and community life. When anti-clerical violence exploded after the outbreak of the Spanish Civil War in July 1936, Dominican convents were shut down and the friars forced to scatter. Francisco returned home to Híjar, seeking shelter in his own family's house, but was discovered and arrested simply for being a friar and a priest. On August 2, 1936, he was pulled from custody and shot without any legal process at all. Pope John Paul II beatified him in 2001, together with José Aparicio Sanz and 231 other companions killed during Spain's religious persecution of the 1930s. Francisco is remembered for the decades he gave to teaching and to religious life before his death, and his life teaches that a lifetime of quiet formation can be its own form of faithful witness, even when it ends in violence. And we close today's August 2nd journey with the youngest of these martyrs, a 24-year-old priest who walked straight toward danger to search for the superior he was worried about. This is Blessed Francisco Tomás Serra, born in Alcalá, Spain, on October 11, 1911, and killed in Madrid on August 2, 1936. Francisco joined the Amazonian Fathers, the tertiary Capuchins of Our Lady of Sorrows, while still a teenager, made his final profession in 1933, and was ordained a priest in 1934. The Amazonian charism placed him at the service of vulnerable young people and youth reform institutions, and he pursued further training in France and Belgium before beginning medical studies in Madrid, hoping to better serve the boys in his care. When the Civil War broke out in July 1936 and religious communities were forcibly dissolved, Francisco went looking for his own superior, Father Bienvenido Maria, whose safety worried him deeply, even though the search obviously increased his own danger. He was recognized as a religious, arrested, and killed in Madrid on August 2. His body was found the next day near the walls of a reform institution. He was only 24 years old. Pope John Paul II beatified him in 2001 alongside José Aparicio Sanz and 232 other companions. And with that, we close today's 10 Saints of August 2. If any of these lives touched you, subscribe here to Saint of the Day, comment asking one of these saints to intercede for someone you love, and share this video with anyone who might need to hear this message today. Every share like that is truly a small act of evangelization. And remember, the full prayer to each of these saints is right here in the video description.